I just finished an audiobook by Tim Tebow. It's called Through My Eyes, and I highly recommend it. If you don't know, Tim Tebow is a bit of a celebrity. He's a professional athlete who played in the NFL, and I think he's currently playing in AAA baseball. He had an exceptional college football career playing with Florida State, and he describes this one story in the lead up to a game where they were playing against the top-ranked LSU, Louisiana State University. Now, LSU fans, they are known for their fervor. They are obsessed with their team. This is their tribe. This is who they identify with, who they love. And so it just so happened that one of the LSU fans got a hold of Tim Tebow's personal cell number. And so they spread that number around, and next thing you know, he's getting hundreds and hundreds of texts and phone calls. People are intimidating him and sending all kinds of obscene, nasty stuff. They even sent death threats to him and his family. It was so bad, he wasn't even answering the phone at one point, and the battery would only last about 90 minutes. And so anyways, this is the context, right? This tribe mentality of LSU fans who are opposed to Tim Tebow. He's not even like a human being. He's just a threat that stands in their way. Well, they went to play the game, and early in the game, Tebow scored a touchdown. And so, you know how the football players will celebrate in the end zone? He went there and he pretended to dial a cell number and look up at the fence. He's like, did you get that call? So anyways, that was his little way of responding. But I think it's so interesting. He was reflecting himself on the experience, and he said, all of that over football, right? Like a bunch of oversized guys chasing around a pigskin. Now, don't get me wrong. I think it's great that people get passionate about their favorite sports teams, but it's interesting how quickly, as humans, we can get associated with our tribe. We can identify with our team, something that's relatively inconsequential. And fans, they can be in such hard opposition against one another in these rivalries. Like, I don't know if you've ever heard it said, I hate Toronto Maple Leafs fans. Now, I can understand why somebody would say that, actually. No, just kidding. Seriously, you hate a people group because they cheer for a team? That's crazy. I know of another guy who so identifies with his team, if they lose, the next day, it's like he's semi-depressed. Like the whole day, it affects his mood. He's down. He's impacted. This deeply ingrained sense of identity, it's not just tied to sports. It is tied to other aspects of our life as well. And you might just reflect yourself. Like, who do you belong to? Or what do you belong to? Maybe you're kind of a tech guy and you geek out over certain products by a certain company. Maybe you remember those ads, I'm a Mac, I'm a PC, right? It's not like I own a Mac or I have a PC. It's like I identify with, I am a Mac, or I know of couples, this is the dividing line. One spouse will only buy Apple products, and the other spouse will never buy Apple products, and maybe you found yourself in debates over technology, and you might just think, like, it's a machine. It helps you do stuff, to communicate or to do work or create whatever, but it's just a machine. Now, what about politics? Have you ever seen people identify, maybe yourself, you identify strongly with, or you even belong to a political party? Now, I know of families, they can't even discuss politics because it just gets too heated at the dinner table. Now, let me try to prove my point about these different tribes. I'm just going to say one word. Trump. Right away, whatever you're feeling inside, I think it proves my point. You're either anti-Trump or pro-Trump, and you associate with these different tribes, these political parties. I find it so fascinating. Now, when it comes to politics, I'm a complete ignoramus. I admit that. But it's so funny when I hear my fellow Canadians arguing with other Canadians about American politics. And it gets so charged up. It's almost like Canadians identify as being either Republican or Democrat. And we can debate for hours upon hours upon hours north of the border as if somehow that's going to influence the election. Sadly, I see this kind of tribe mentality in the church as well. People can identify so strongly with something that is less than central. I hear people say, I'm only about the Latin Mass, or I'm only about social justice. That's my thing. And there can be judgments and condemnation about the other groups. And frankly, social media today has made it even worse. It's made it even faster for groups to harden into these various tribes. But here's the thing. This is not new. This is not a new phenomenon. Right back in the first century, in the early church, we witnessed that. And that's exactly what Paul is speaking into in our second reading today in his letter to the Romans. I want to give you a little bit of context. So there's this early church being set up in Rome, and there's various groups, various tribes that are being formed. Now, one of them was made up of Jewish Christians, people who had formerly been Jewish and become Christian. And another group was Gentiles, people who were never Jewish, but they also became Christian. And Paul, it's a total oversimplification, but Paul refers to these two groups as the weak and the strong. These weak, what he says, the people who had been Jewish, they were still sticking to their dietary laws. They were only eating kosher foods, and they would still observe the Jewish religious calendar. Meanwhile, the strong, the Gentiles, they were free from the law. So they could eat anything they wanted, and their calendar was wide open. Now, there's this great line here, Romans chapter 14, verse 2. Catch this. Some believe in eating anything, while the weak eat only vegetables. Now, that's totally taken out of context, but that's a great line you can use against your friend who happens to be a vegetarian. The weak eat only vegetables. Anyways, let me continue. So the early Christians, they would identify with one group or another. And it was almost like there were these hardened fans, these rivals who were like sports fans against each other, judging each other and throwing insults and condemnation. And then in our passage today, starting at verse 7, Paul tries to bring perspective into the controversy. He's like, seriously? You're getting fixated about somebody else's diet? You're missing the point. This whole thing is about life and death. It's not about you. It's about Jesus. He writes, we do not live to ourselves. We do not die to ourselves. It's not about you. He continues, if we live to the Lord. And if we die to the Lord. If. That little word. It's like Paul saying, if we live. He's not even presuming that his audience is really alive. As if to say, you know what? If the only thing you get passionate about is someone else's diet or a religious preference or a football game or politics, let me tell you something. There is more to life. There is so much more to life. And Paul continues, I think he's offering the secret here. He says this, whether we live or whether we die, we are the Lord's. You see, in the grand scheme of things, what matters most is who you belong to. And like if you're obsessed with a sports team or you belong to a political party, that's fine for now. But at a certain point, you're going to die. And then, who will you belong to? The very next line in verse 10, which is just outside of our passage today, Paul says, we will all stand before the judgment seat of God. When you die, if Jesus were to ask you, who do you belong to? What are you going to say? Are you going to say, well, I belong to the Liberal Party, or I belong to the Conservative Party, or I'm a Patriots fan, or heaven forbid, I'm a Leafs fan. Is that what you're going to say? I mean, sports dynasties will come and go. Politicians will run out their terms, and it may be sobering, but most of the strongly held opinions and preferences that you have are not going to matter when you're dead. When you are standing at the edge of eternity, there is only one person to belong to. And that's Paul's message. If we live, if we die, belong to Jesus. Belong to Jesus. Just go ahead, write that in the comments right now. Belong to Jesus, or I belong to Jesus. He is the only person worth arguing for. You see, if you belong to Jesus in this life, you will belong to Him in death, and you will even belong to Him in the next life. So don't get distracted by all these other tribes that are less important. Actually, just want to change the line from Paul ever so slightly to make it more personal. Whether I live or whether I die, I am the Lord's. Is that something that you can honestly say? I know for myself, I need to spend more time with that. And I encourage you, you might take some time this week and just reflect on that line. Whether I live or whether I die, I am the Lord's. So what can we do? What's next? Well, I'm glad you asked. That's actually the title of our preaching series, our brand new preaching series. What's next? It's about taking next steps with God, and we want to set you up with the tools to help. You see, there's some good news. Regardless of your past, regardless of who or what you've belonged to before, there's an opportunity now to choose to belong to Jesus. And over these 4 weeks, we're going to spend 2 weeks talking about Alpha, and then 2 weeks talking about life groups. Now, Alpha, I'll begin with that. There's these 3 parts. There's a fun human connection, there's a relevant talk, and then there's a conversation. And you're free to engage however you feel comfortable, but there's absolutely no requirements. Anyone is welcome. In fact, I want to invite you to try Alpha. It's for everybody. If you're single, if you're married, if you're old, or if you're young, if you're new, or if you've been here forever, if you're watching Mass online, or if you're coming to Mass in person, if you're from Clayton Park, or if you're from Cambodia, you are invited to try Alpha. And since we're in the midst of a pandemic, we're taking everything online. And so it's easier than ever before to be able to experience Alpha from the comfort of your own home. I want you to consider Alpha because it could be the thing that starts you on this journey of belonging to Jesus. It could be the most important thing that you ever do in this life because it could have an impact for all of eternity. Now, at this time, I'd like to share a witness with you of a man named Sean. We're going to play a short video for you. Sean, he's connected to us here at St. Benedict. He had been invited to Alpha over and over and over again. In fact, he even registered a few times, and it never worked out. He never took Alpha until this past winter, just a few months ago. And I'd like you to hear his story.
My life before Alpha was disconnected. I was disconnected in a way that I didn't truly understand. And over the course of 3+ years, I was invited to Alpha on numerous times by my beautiful wife, Elizabeth, by my loving parish, but yet for over 3 years, I would sit in this very building and not really listen. Again, I chalk that up to being disconnected. And thanks to attending Alpha, I began my journey of reconnection. The week 1 of Alpha posed the biggest question, is there more to life than this? And to this very moment, I still ponder that. And my answer is now yes, there is a lot more to life than this. And I give thanks to the Lord, to my family, both heavenly and earthly, that Alpha was able to bring me onto this journey of revelation now. So disconnect led to connect. And through this connectivity, I've embarked on a path of revelation, if you will. And since Alpha, well, Alpha, again, it's continued. While the course itself, the 11 weeks have come and gone, the experiences, my faith, my understanding of who Jesus was while on earth, who Jesus is now in heaven, setting places for us all. The great mystery, again, has become just that. It's become a great mystery, in that each week of Alpha was like a great novel, if you will, or a great binge watch on Netflix. But this show never ends, and the mystery truly continues. And thanks to the Alpha team here, thanks to the structure of Alpha, the support afterwards, I'm happy to say that the 9 fellows whom I was with at my table, we called ourselves the Table 3 Fellowship. We've remained together. We still connect through Life Group, and we still continue to share our Alpha experiences in what has become a very safe, meaningful, and fruitful journey to help as a person and as a group and as a community, and here in St. Benedict's as a parish, to continue our journey to the Holy Spirit, to continue to receive the gifts and the fruits, and to basically continue our service to the Lord. That's my Alpha story.
Thank you so much, Sean, for sharing. I love that. He's a regular guy. He's a good man, maybe kind of half committed. And then that question haunted him. Is there more to life than this? And the answer is yes. And he started this journey, this amazing journey of belonging to Jesus. So what's next for you? I'm going to try and make it really simple. There's 2 options today. If you have not taken Alpha, then what's next is Alpha. Give it a shot. Try. If you've been on the sidelines for a while, you're unsure. Maybe you've even thought about it before. This is your moment. It's more convenient than ever before. Just go for it and give it a shot. And secondly, if you have done Alpha, then what's next for you is to invite somebody else to have the chance to experience this opportunity, so that they too can have this impact on their life that could last for all of eternity. You could have that kind of powerful influence on somebody. So please take that seriously. Pray about somebody who you can invite to try Alpha, and then go to saintbenedict.ca/alpha. All the information will be there, and you can register, or you can invite a friend to register there at saintbenedict.ca/alpha. I want to end with this. I was talking about Tim Tebow at the start. This incredible athlete who played in the most prestigious position, quarterback, at the highest level in the NFL. And yet, I think many sports critics would say his time in the NFL was short-lived. He was only there for about 3 years. Now, having listened to his book, I know that Tim Tebow loves football. He's passionate about football. But it never owned him. He never belonged to football. Before, during, and after his time in the NFL, Tebow has always belonged to Jesus. That's his tribe. That's who he identifies with. That's what's most important to him in his life, Jesus. I'll give you just a few quick examples. Tebow, he was famous for genuflecting on the field. He would go down on the field and he would pray. This simple act of humility and prayer, and it became so famous, people were doing it and they referred to it as Tebowing. Now, another example, you might have noticed football players, they'll wear this eye black, that the kind of lines under their eyes. It's basically makeup for football players. But in college, he would write scripture verses on his eye black, and one day he wrote John 3:16. And within 24 hours, John 3:16 was the most Googled verse, the most searched for item on the internet. Over 90 million people had looked up these words from scripture. For God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that anyone who would believe in him would not perish, but would live forever. Tim Tebow belongs to Jesus, and one day, his huge athletic body is going to decline and decay and turn to dust, and he will still belong to Jesus. What's next? Let's do whatever we can today to belong to Jesus, because in the end, belonging to Jesus is what matters most.